So hi to the viewers who are watching this. I'm joined and in conversation with Carl Palmer, who needs no introduction, but nevertheless will give him a small one. So the essence of what we're talking about today is we're looking at success and in the sense of progressive music. So that is not necessarily prog rock, but of course it is largely in Carl's case. It's about music that changed things, music that had impact, music that has legacy, and to understand how that can be achieved. Speaking to Carl, he'll be able to open up some doors and share some of his insights, because he is somebody who actually has done that not once, not twice, but actually throughout a whole career. So Carl, obviously more information will come out about the things that you've done in this short conversation. But of course, there was the crazy world of Arthur Brown in the early days, Atomic Rooster, not one, but two supergroups, which is a very interesting concept. And in fact, you know, one of them, it'd be interesting to talk about the name Palmer was in the name of the group, which doesn't really happen that often, you know, and that was a vehicle where everyone in the band kind of had center stage. It let the individuals breathe and do their thing, because arguably they were all stars, you know, which, you know, isn't often seen. But, you know, so kind of it would be good to come back to that point. But at the start of it, I've got this image of young Carl, who's 14, 15, 16, and you know, early on, so not as an adult, you were playing in resident bands in a Mecca, I believe. But at some point, and I'm not kind of sort of describing it as a race, but at some point, Carl Palmer became this person who rose above the other young drummers of the time, you know, of the peers. I know it's a ridiculously big question, Carl, but, you know, how did you do it? You know, what were the elements of that you attribute your success to?
I would say the point that you're actually talking about, when I was living in Birmingham and I didn't leave home until I was 16. I think I left school on the Friday and whatever it was, I left home on the Sunday. I remember I had my 16th birthday in London. So it's very close. What had actually happened, and everybody needs luck. There's always an element of luck. Doesn't matter how much talent you've got on to be in the right place at the right time. That is so true today as it was back then. So what actually happened to me was, after going through kind of playing in sort of the Locarno bands and playing in traditional trad groups and this and that, I decided to have a go at being in a rock group. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I did the audition, which was basically learning the music on about 4 or 5 singles they handed me with chalk mark on this side saying, that's the track you learn. And I kind of learned them all in about half an hour or whatever. And I played in this band called the King Bees. What actually happened, the jump off point was one day I was playing at what they used to call an all-nighter at Birmingham Town Hall. And the King Bees went on first at 7 o'clock in the evening and went on last 7 o'clock in the morning. Lovely slot. But at that show, you had people like the Spencer Davis Group, you had the Steam Packet, Rod Stewart, Brian Auger, Julie Driscoll, all of that stuff. And you had a singer who'd had a #1 hit called Chris Farlowe. Chris Farlowe and the Thunderbirds, and the hit was written by Mick Jagger, Keith Richards. Anyway, because they had to travel up from London, the Chris Farlowe and the Thunderbirds, most of the bands did, to Birmingham, they got there too early. And it was a one-off sort of date they were playing, and they're obviously being paid very, very well by the Birmingham Council or whoever was promoting it. And Chris Farlowe walked in with his guitar player, who's a famous guitar player even today, Albert Lee, and the King Bees had been on stage for about 40 minutes, and we were just finishing off the last 20 minutes or whatever it was we had left. And he saw me play, Chris Farlow, and he was having problems with his drummer. And when I came off stage, he said, look, if you ever decide to come to London and you want a job, here's my telephone number, please give me a call. Well, I didn't know about networking then, that was a word which came in over the last 20 years, but way back then, I said, okay, Mr. Farlow, thank you very much for your number. And I took his number. I said, but I will tell you something quite honestly. I'm on a program next week called Thank Your Lucky Stars. I've just recorded on the Fontana label, and we've got a new single out called A Little Bit of Soap. And I'm quite sure it's going to do well, not knowing how hard it is.
Wow.
But that's youth, isn't it? That's the enthusiasm of youth. Anyway, nothing happened with my band. And we went onto the television, we did the show, we did all the stuff we meant to do. And within about, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, somewhere in that period, it was over. So I'd kept the telephone number and I called him, and I went down to London on the Sunday night. I had my audition in the Bag of Nails in Kingley Street the following Wednesday, got past the audition. I'd already written all of his songs out, so I knew what they were, and that's how it started. So then I was at least in a professional environment where I'm dealing with a professional agent. I'm going out of the country to work, and that was the learning curve. That's where I started to learn. But that was luck that got me there, and I think it was education that held me there because I could read well. So if the worst came to the worst, I could always do sessions in London, which I never did. And I would never advocate that. If you really want to have a go at rolling what I call the musical dice, you need to have a go at being in a band that you can contribute, that you can have a percentage of, that you can help grow. That's very important. Anyway, stayed with Chris Farlow for quite a while. And then I had this big opportunity to do some recordings with the Crazy World of Arthur Brown, who I knew about. And the thing that I would always stress to any young musicians is you have to look at the musical environment that you're in at the time you're about to launch. And the environment at that stage was very psychedelic and lots of, lights and all of this kind of stuff and very, very weird music. And, the Pink Floyd had started in that time. So that was that whole area. So I decided to go to the clubs and see how that all worked, because I've got a nice wage coming in. I'm in a backing band, but I know that's not it. I know there's more things to get, but I need to.
Sorry, what year was that, Carl? Just to help.
So we're talking about
60s,
1966, 67.
Yeah. Mm.
So come to 68. By that time, I kind of weighed up the situation in London with the music, what was voguey, what was on trend, what was working. And I realized that I needed to be in a kind of psychedelic band, something that was a bit more sort of out there, a bit more mystical. So the music I kind of enjoyed, that the Pink Floyd played and people like this. But there was this guy called Arthur Brown. And the Crazy World of Arthur Brown were quite a big band in their day. So what happened was they needed some sessions to be done. And I never wanted to do sessions because I never wanted to be a high gun. Anyway, I said, yes, I'd go along and play. I would do it. And it worked out with my time frame at the schedule that I had at the time. So I went along and I played. And that was it. I let it go. I went to a couple of Crazy World of Arthur Brown concerts. And I got to understand that whole fire helmet thing, the whole theatrical approach. I realized that, you just can't be a good player. There's got to be eye candy. You've got to present. You've got to give. You've got to make this special. And I realized that's what Arthur was doing. Anyway, cut a long story short, as I say again, about 2 months after that, I got a call saying, would I fly out to America? Because the drummer, Dracian Theka, has left the band, and the band is doing incredibly well. And could you come and join us? Well, I kind of hummed and hawed for a little bit. Anyway, within about 3 weeks, they were #1 in America. Mm. The single was #1 on The God of Hellfire. Now, on The God of Hellfire, there's probably about 4 other drummers. There's Dracian, there was John Eisman, the great late John Eisman, John Marshall. There's so many people they used. But they called me. So I flew out there. I said, it's a long way to go. They said, no, no, you've got the job. We just want you to come. So I flew out and that was it. And the door was open. I got it. I saw America. I saw the way they promoted. I saw the way they dealt with things. Music was bigger than big there. I didn't understand publishing. I didn't understand, because we didn't have downloads and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't understand that publishing, writing, publisher share, writer share. But I understood concerts. Now I'm learning how, there's all the people coming through these gates, gate A, gate B, but who takes gate C? And then I find out that gate C is an area where the promoter is not telling you he sold those tickets and they're for his back pocket. And I won't name the people because they're actually dead now. But anyway, I just started to I'm very inquisitive, always ready to learn, and said, what happens there? How does this work? Anyway, so I started to get the big picture. I got the big picture. So once it started to fall apart in America with the band, and I think the main sort of life lesson you have to learn is some people are more serious than others. Some people are interested in the fame and fortune. I'm not just interested in that. It's nice to have it, I'm very pleased that, the lifestyle I've got and the fame's great. But actually, it's the music that drives me. I just love, and I love all types of music, quite eclectic. So what was happening was I noticed that people were taking more time off to take drugs. And I could never understand that, because I didn't start drinking till I was 22, and I've never drunk a beer to this day. So I saw it falling apart and I thought, I better get out of here. Anyway, on deciding to leave, I spoke to the keyboard player, Vincent Crane, who was a great friend and a great, great person. I said, look, I've got to leave. I just want you to know, I don't want to drop you in it, but I'm on my way back to England. This is not going to go any further. We can't find the lead singer. He's disappeared to some commune on Long Island. We haven't been in contact for the last 3 weeks. We've been living in a hotel for 4 weeks, which is fine. Everything was being paid for, and I was short of nothing. But it didn't feel right to me. And when you have that gut feeling, and you should always go by a gut feeling. Anyway, the keyboard player decided to come back to England with me. I said, well, look, let's form a band. He said, that's great, Carl. He said, we are from the crazy world of art. He said, it's got to. So I said, I tell you what, you sit at home and write some music. Let's get some material going, and I'll go out and sort out I'll get the best management possible. Well, I did. I got Robert Stigwood. Robert Stigwood said, we'll have a go at that, Carl. I met him twice, managed to talk him into it. And we had Robert Stigwood managing the Atomic Rooster. And of course, the Atomic Rooster did incredibly well. And I said, the main thing we need is a hit single. I said, because it doesn't matter how good the underground flow is, how good the reputation is, or the musicianship, we need something that's commercial. We need, without selling out. Somehow we've got to do that. And I said to Vincent, look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I can write that 3 to 4 minutes, which will do it. I could help you, but we need something. Well, anyway, we came up with a track after about a year of being together as a band called Tomorrow Night, which was a #1 single, which I didn't play on, by the way, because by the time it came out, it was about to come out, I had just left and gone with Greg and Keith. So they re-recorded it with their new drummer, and that was fine. But then Atomic Rooster was off, they're off and going. So I made a recording of it, but it's not the recording that was a #1. And that just proved to me that unless we had that commercial approach, without selling out and without looking cheap and keeping all our integrity, then, it's very hard to move on. And then once I was with Greg and Keith, I was pretty sort of involved, really, with a whole business side. I've gone through that because Robert Stigwood used to manage E.L.P, manage me, and E.G. Management managed Greg and Keith. And I went one day to Robert Stigwood and said, look, the guys don't want to come over to you. It seems a bit strange, you just managing a third. Would you let me go? He said, Carl, you're free.
Mm.
Oh, I said, fantastic. I'd signed a contract with him. I said, I hope you understand. I said, it's a chance I've got. He said, no, I've got it. It was the right time. He'd already got Hair, the big production, and he'd got Cream, and he'd got the Bee Gees, and he'd got Lulu. So, I was a bit of a small fry really to him. Anyway, after about a year of ELP having two managers, David Entover, Johnny Gaydon, E.G., and Robert Stigwood, we got rid of Stiggy. And Stiggy said, I'm always here to help. And once I was with Greg and Keith, because I'd spent probably more time in America than them, I said, if we could be a band that has music that opens doors and has music that deals with the intellectual side of our audience, then that's what we've got. And Keith understood that completely, because Keith was very involved with classical adaptations. And I just love that. We had a very similar sort of record collection when we spoke. But Greg was the one that opened the door, because he was the one that loved the Beatles like I do, and loved sort of Bridge Over Troubled Water, and all Simon and Garfunkel. And he wrote 3-minute, 3-chord, like beautiful love songs from the beginning. Still You Turn Me On, Footprints in the Snow, I Believe in Father Christmas, Lucky Me, you name it. So here was the deal. I think, well, this is perfect, isn't it? And then I realized we were called a prog rock band. And whilst I didn't want to fight that, a prog rock band, what does that mean? You're progressive. You've got long intros to pieces of music, and you use the latest instruments of the day. Well, ELP was more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had these pretty ballads. We actually opened doors and said, here's a big piece of classical music as well we're going to play for you. And here's a concept piece, Tarkus, we're going to play for you. But here's a beautiful ballad from the beginning. So we had this double-edged thing, and we were quite eclectic, yeah.
Yes.
But, we just went for the prog rock label, because that's what the journalists labeled us.
Yeah. Do you know, Carl, I've had a series of questions here that I thought I might ask, but the irony is you've answered them all pretty much. And if I run through them very quickly, how important was chemistry? Well, you've already kind of said that, you described how the band ELP gelled. You've described.
Let me just come in on that, though. Let me embellish that chemistry. So you're asking the question, how important is chemistry? Let me just tell you, for example, the chemistry in probably the biggest band I've been in so far, which is, I always say so far because I'm always looking around the corner.
Yeah.
You never know. ELP. Now, ELP, very little in common as people. Yes, we could go out for dinner together.
Yeah.
We might have gone to the odd show together, but very little in common. What was in common was the most important thread. The chemistry was based around music. Prime example would be, we wouldn't argue about money. We would never argue about women, but we might argue about 4 bars of music for about 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple as that. No one ever sat on the fence. If somebody didn't like something, we didn't do it. And if somebody didn't like something, please say it. And that was all it was. Unless we all went together the same way regarding music only, if we didn't go the same way as 3 people, then we wouldn't do it. So we had this thing which was very, I don't know what it is actually, Tony, but sometimes some musicians you can sit down and play with and it just happens straight away and you go, yes. Well, what is that? How did that come about? And that's what that was daily. Now, the next minute, we'd put the drumsticks down, we'd walk over and go and have a coffee, and we could be arguing like cat and mouse, about some music, or, oh, you didn't do this, you should have put that in there, you forgot to do that. There's all of that going. The minute we'd walk back, pick up the instruments, boom, smiling faces, and we knew this was a weapon we'd got, that this was important. It was meant to be, And I think when you get a band of 3, 4, or 5, you need, with 3, it's a lot easier, but in a band, you don't want anyone saying, well, I think that's okay. No, you don't want that. Why is it okay? What could be better? Tell me, And I think that's really, really important. And of course, it's very difficult to get that makeup in a band because normally, number one, there's always one guy who's a bit of a leader. There's always another guy who's probably the better writer. There's always another guy who's good at sort of like maybe the business side. And there was another guy who's not really interested, but wants to be there, but he looks great and plays great. So you've got him. There's always this kind of makeup of people. So what you have to do is you have to make those personalities work, and people have to understand, look, you're good at writing the songs. I can't do that. We need some songs now. Keith, you're really good at like this classical stuff. What adaptations are we going to do in the future? So this would be the musical chemistry that would come in. And I can be very honest with you and say that I acted as a referee for about 16 years with the guys, and that's how it was. And like if they'd known you for like 20 years or whatever, and you walked into the room and you said, guys, I don't really like that, even though they'd really known you very, very well, you wouldn't get anywhere. And the manager would walk and say, if I took them to the side and said, you know something, we've got a problem here, the room would be quiet and they would listen. Now, I'm not saying they would take on board what I'm saying, but they would listen really close. And if I said it, it's possibly true, but I don't agree because I don't want to do it, whatever. But they would take it from me. So I could change more than most people. And it was only through musical trust. That's all. Yeah. You know, I wasn't walking into the room with a carrier bag full of songs and saying, we've got to play this. My main vision, my main deal was, how do we make the group better, not the individuals, because collectively we're strength, you know.
But that was the united goal, wasn't it? The thing that harmonized everything.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you how you resolved disputes, but it's interesting you say everyone had their role, part of that chemical equation, but you know, if anyone from the outside came in, everyone pulled together. Yeah. You know, but I mean, on the back of that, there was a huge amount of talent, though, wasn't there? You know, and I mean, you know, your opportunities came from being in a certain place at a certain time in part.
Very important. Yeah,
you didn't have technology that you know, like LinkedIn, so you could reach out to somebody and create a good account of yourself in that way, you know, but fundamentally at the core of it, there would have been certain values, and you know, at the core would have been the talent, the ability to actually, you know, play better than most at certain points, and then to rise to the top of, you know, you know, who are perceived as the best drummers in the world, you know, which you certainly did. You almost made it look easy, Carl, but, you know, but then there's another point, which is surely it wasn't easy. And you're talking about, you know, dedication, you know, a relentless pursuit of excellence in your craft. So that, you know, that's another thing that I think, you know, came out in you.
I think what it is, it's self-gratification. You know, I'm always, you know, if you tell me I played great one night, and then there was an interview saying how great, you know, Carl Palmer's E.L.P. Legacy played, I don't take any notice of that, by the way.
Sure.
I know how well I played.
Yeah.
Now, just so I can build that structure for you, whilst I'm that way, within E.L.P., Keith wasn't that way. Okay. If he read something negative about the band, it would really affect him. Yeah. So I would have to say, well, what are you, this guy from Newcastle who's written something about us, saying that, you know, we're a saber rattling, you know, over the top, you know, whatever band. I said, come on. He said, but, you know, he said, all these people have read it. So I'd go like this, Keith, come with me. And I'd open the curtain. I said, look through there. It's full. Those are the people that count, not this one guy in Scunthorpe or wherever he is, you know. So don't, but he would take it on board. Greg wasn't too bad with that at all, but Keith was super sensitive to that, and I always tried to stop that, because I don't want people to tell me I'm great. I don't want people to tell me how good the show was. We know it's lovely to hear it, but it's not going to be the thing that drives me or drive them or it would drive us.
Well, people voted with their feet, didn't they, for for your work time and time again. Yeah. But you know, I was also interested about, you know, because the E.L.P. did do really big things. You know, there was a sort of, I mean, I was looking at it from the outside, and actually only really after, because I'm, you know, I know it doesn't look it, but I'm actually too young to remember E.L.P. in the, you know,
I understand.
in the Bigger the Power. But particularly looking back, it's having access to things now that we didn't have. You could see things like it appeared from things like the time of, you were inventing things like drum synths.
Yeah, yeah.
There's you can kind of go, I mean, even now, people are going, wow, the scale of these things. And
Well, it was never understood, Tony. You brought up that point, just so you know, drum synths and things. The first electronic drum solo was recorded on a piece of music called Toccata on brain salad surgery.
Mhm.
The music was written by Ginastera. And I had this chap make me up these little cigar box type synths. There was 8 of them. I had a mitigator where I could plug it into the mitigator and take the 8 sounds which were fixed up an octave or down an octave. And I did an electronic drum solo in the middle of Toccata on the Brain Salad Surgery album. And we didn't make a big deal of it. We just put it out there. Of course, everyone thought it was Keith.
Well, can I ask the question?
Atmospheric sounds. So you could Keith said, what should we do here? Should we tell? I said, is it worth going through all of that? We know what it is. We'll mention it in interviews. And see if no one ever picked up on it.
Right.
It's really weird. It kind of went under the radar,
I mean, but it's kind of come to the surface now, with
yes,
YouTube and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about, whilst you sort of, I mean, things did get picked up on, clearly, and I was kind of thinking, did you have a written plan with milestones in it where we're going to do this at this time? But this idea of innovation. So where did that innovation actually come from? What sort of person, what sort of circumstances come up with these very novel ideas that sometime later everyone's doing it? Do you know what I mean?
Well, let's just take the concept album, which was a very big thing at the birth of prog rock. We thought, we can't, do 3-minute pieces all the time. It'd be better if we could get something that's more involved and involve great songs within the structure of this music.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with a 5/4 or 10/8 riff, and I played it to Keith. And Keith said, oh, well, that's interesting. And I said, well, the melody could be where the accents are. We went through all of that. Anyway, Tarkus was born. And Tarkus became a concept album and was about 15, 16 minutes long as a piece of music. It had Stones of Years and Battlefield and all these songs in there, about 3 songs. And for us, it wasn't a case of we're going to make a concept album. We said, let's just make a long piece of music and see how far we can get with it. Well, if I was to show you the multi-track of Tarkus, the 2-inch tape, it's got 17 edits on it. We couldn't play Tarkus when we wrote it.
No.
Just couldn't play it. We would play to a point and stop. Is everyone okay? All right. We'd mark out the points because you can't play to a point where there's a cymbal hanging over because you get this cut-off sound. And it started to develop. As we kept doing this, it kept getting longer and more involved, and we kept going back to the beginning and playing it. So it was all experimental, really. It wasn't as if we woke up one morning and said we had to do this. Well, we were experimenting and inventing at the same time.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. You're using the studio as a tool for us, as well. You were pushing parameters. There seemed like this sense that there's more ideas bursting out than actually you could accommodate.
Yes, exactly.
So there's this sort of creative mindset that is fueling. Because I was kind of thinking, were you thinking, what can we do bigger and better than the last thing? Or were you, was there like a sequence where you're going, right, we do this now, but we're heading towards a point where actually.
No, we would always look at the success of the last product, and if it was successful and someone more successful than others, how can we go from there? So from like the first album, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Pictures at an Exhibition, Trilogy was the first album we overdubbed every track. First of all, the idea, the idea within the group on the first album was we must be able to play it as 3 people and it's got to sound big. Let's arrange it and design it that way. We did that. On the second album, which was a live album, Pictures at an Exhibition, live, so you couldn't overdub it. Well, we could have done later on in the studio, but we didn't. By the time we got to Trilogy, we said, listen, we're making records here, aren't we? We're making music. Let's do the best we can as 3-piece, our original idea with the arrangement, and then let's just overdub it, make it sound humongous. So we did it. Of course, we didn't think of how do you take that on stage. At the time, we would have needed 2 other keyboard players because you didn't have MIDI in those days. That wasn't there. But that's how it happened. And then from Trilogy, we went on to Brain Salad Surgery, which was the pinnacle of the creativity. And there was new instruments being developed, the drum synthesizer and this and that. And it just kept going up and up and up like that. So it was a natural spiral, but the last product that was recorded triggered the next, if you see that.
You were making sense of it as you went along, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I mean, just to understand that is very helpful to, because, the environment, the circumstances have a profound impact on what you can create. And
well, let me just tell you this, though, for like young musicians listening to this, let me just give you like a small kind of, rundown on a great instrumentalist, great keyboard player like Keith Emerson. So Keith Emerson, known to be a great showman on his L100, riding it across the stage, sticking daggers into it, throwing daggers into the Leslie, all of that. His musical knowledge, when I say knowledge, I don't mean the actual theory of music. I'm talking about his musical knowledge of recorded sounds was unbelievable. Now, when we first met, we went through all the records that we got, Keith and I, first of all, actually, and almost mirror for mirror, because we both love jazz. We both love that American sort of Coltrane, Charlie Parker, all of that kind of era. Anyway, Keith had a lot of Earl Garner, great piano player, and a lot of stuff like this. And if I said to Keith, could you play me the Earl Garner solo on that Autumn Leaves? Do you remember that thing he did? Oh, he said, I know the one you mean. And then if you turn around and said, could you play the solo in the middle of Take 5 by Dave Brubeck? I know what you mean. His vocabulary musically of what he'd learned and what he'd listened to and what he'd stored was humongous, which means when you get to a writing stage, just think of all the ideas and permutations he's got to pull from and use. So then you've got this walking encyclopedia of knowledge, and and he's playing the lead instrument. So you can't ask for more than that. I mean, you cannot ask for more than that.
But you wouldn't have been thinking of how to, of that when you formed. You weren't thinking that was what, in essence, was accomplished was an assembly of 3 of the people at the top of their game. So it's about working with the best people you can possibly work with.
Let me tell you, I'd said no to joining Greg and Keith first of all, because they had Mitch Mitchell as a drummer. I think he went to one rehearsal. There was a problem there. And I said no when they asked me. And the reason I ended up saying yes, I'll tell you about later. But what I did do in that period was I went through everything that Keith Emerson had ever played. And I realized what a great keyboard player he was. I actually was on the same bill as Keith when he was in the Nice. I stepped in for Mickey Underwood, Fleetwood Mac.
Yes, right.
Right?
Fleetwood.
Yeah, so it was the Jeremy Spencer, Peter Green days, and Mickey was ill, and John Whitfield called me up and said, would I play with Fleetwood Mac? I did, and it was here in London, and at top of the bill was the Nice, underneath was Fleetwood Mac. And I met Keith that night. It was the first time I met him. I was 17. I'd already been going to the Marquee Club to watch the Nice because I was a fan, because they play classical music. Basically, my family are all classical musicians, or have been in the past. So by the time it came around to joining him as an individual, I got a good insight. I didn't realize how great he was, though. That was another thing, but I got a damn good insight. And Greg Lake, I didn't know, but he was such a great singer, that choir voice sort of voice and things. I didn't know much about King Crimson. I'll be honest, I hadn't followed them except for Schizoid Man, which I thought was an amazing piece of music. So, I'd kind of done my homework, but I only only a quarter of it, because by the time I got within the realms of working with them on a day-to-day basis, God, were they talented, bookends, bookends.